Nobody is excited for Cataclysm Classic. I kind of slightly am.
You know, at BlizzCon 2023, you could have heard a freaking pin drop in the room when Cataclysm Classic was announced.
Our journey will continue into Cataclysm Classic in 2024. The Classic journey started with you as a love letter to the WoW community. We asked what
I mean, there's rough patches in every letter, you know what I'm saying?
you wanted. You responded to us, and we listened.
Now, I wasn't at BlizzCon personally. I was at an event over that weekend, so I don't know what it was like in the room, but just judging from the recording, a lot of people really were not that excited, which is something, to be fair, that we all could have predicted. Cataclysm Classic, yes, there is people out there that want to play it. Of course there's people that want to play it, but the overwhelming majority of players have
Seriously, people voted for the War Within. Really? Wow. Hardcore self-found. Who wants hardcore self-found? Hardcore self-found is literally the same as hardcore, only stupider, okay? You're still gonna die to the Blizzard servers because the Blizzard servers are the enemy, not the actual mobs, not the actual Undercity elevator. It's the servers. And, well, if it's self-found... If it's self-found, does that mean everyone's gonna 100% be an alchemist? Because what's more better than being an alchemist? You can make the potions that allow you to cheese out of and skid out like a cockroach of fights that you lose. I mean, that's really good. But yeah, look at that. Obviously, everyone's the most hyped for Season of Discovery. That's gonna be cool. I can't wait. 4 days left, boys. 4 days left. I better re-download Classic World of Warcraft because it's probably gonna be on the same thing, right? And in Classic Cataclysm, 6% beautiful.
no interest in this version of World of Warcraft whatsoever. There's some hype, but compared to TBC, Wrath of the Lich King, and even Season of Discovery, Cataclysm Classic just doesn't really resonate with people. And I know that for a lot of you guys, you're probably sitting there wondering why, because a lot of people watching this video right now, you probably never played Cataclysm back in the day. You probably
Yeah, exactly. That was my take. Why it's going to be a sleeper OP expansion.
don't know why so many people for the longest time thought that Cataclysm was WoW's worst expansion. Now, in regards to content and everything that, you know, Cataclysm offered to us as an expansion, it seems cool. I mean, you got a big dragon blowing up the planet and stuff. It's got a good premise. It's got some cool content coming out, Worgen, goblins, these new areas, raids, and so on.
I mean, calling goblins good content is a bit sus, but I'll let this one slide.
But what was the reason people had for not liking Cataclysm back in the day? And what is the reason why today? Why are so many people not interested in Cataclysm Classic? And that's what I'm hoping to answer today. Before we jump in though, of course, have to thank this channel's sponsor, Zygor. It's World of Warcraft's ultimate add-on for leveling, gold making, achievement farming, pet collecting.
Isn't this gold buying? He blurred something out at the start. I thought that's gold buying.
Collecting, mount collecting, you name it, it does everything. Check them out down in the description below. So
But I don't care. If you want to buy gold in World of Warcraft, do it. I mean, you're just making the game better for me by buying gold. That means I can go into 1 GDKP and have the World of Warcraft subscription for free for the next 50 years, because that's how much money you spend on an item that no one actually cares about.
7 reasons why, 7 things that I have, you know, collected from my own thoughts and from my own memories of the expansion, because I did play it back in the day. 7 things that I would say are the reasons why people are not really into Cataclysm Classic and why they're not that hyped for it. The first point, and this is probably one of the weaker points, which is why I'm saying it first, but for some people out there, it might actually be one of the major reasons why they didn't like Cataclysm. But it's the fact that the expansion destroyed the world that we had fallen so much in love with. The premise of Cataclysm,
I mean, I understand why this would be true. For me, it's like, oh, some zones are better, but I remember playing in Thousand Needles after it was, you know, flooded, and that experience sucked. It was really, really bad. So, some zones are different. That's cool, but some are different for, the bad reasons.
As Deathwing has popped out of Deep Home, he's causing chaos, tsunamis, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and so on. And so Blizzard got it in their mind of taking Kalimdor and the Eastern Kingdoms and completely revamping these old zones. And so Kalimdor and the Eastern Kingdoms would be brought up to sort of a modern standard of questing and content and so on and so forth.
Splitting the Barrens in two, honestly, I think that's a good idea, because the Barrens, man, there's a reason the Baron Shed existed. And that reason is because, man, that was a lot of people's home for a very, 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 very long time. So I think at least splitting the Barons in two is not the worst decision, because honestly, man, that zone's too big. It's the biggest zone in the game by far, right?
Zones were going to be reworked, quest lines were going to change, memorable characters were going to be forgotten, new characters were going to be added. Kalimdor and Eastern...
Also, by the way, I have to say this. On paper, it sounds cool. Oh, the world that you know and love now is, in a cataclysm. There's meteors, volcanoes, and all of that. But then you just look at it and it's actually kind of lame. It's kind of boring. Okay, here's a crevice. Oh, look at that. There's lava in it. How scary. There's a crevice. And it's the same. It's like, there's this thing burning. There's a volcano. Something's flooded. A hurricane there. A hurricane there. It's kind of lazy. It's kind of lazy when everything looks like the same acid just plastered over the whole world, honestly. I think that was the biggest downfall with the revamping of the world. That it just didn't hit, okay? It just looked like every zone has, some shit added into it for no reason. And that wasn't great.
Kingdoms, like the OG, like 2 continents from Classic WoW, are kind of like sacred to the World of Warcraft player. And although it was exciting at first, this idea of Deathwing sundering the world and, creating all this change across the 2 continents, everyone was excited for that back in the day, myself included. I mean, come on. But once it was, once this idea was experienced for the first time, the second time, the third time, leveling up ults and stuff, it quickly felt like a downgrade. And we're gonna come back to this, but it felt like the world that we knew and that we loved had just been broken. And not broken from like a lore perspective, like broken by Deathwing. Like it was broken in that what was special about it, the memorable characters and the quest lines and the things that made us fall in love with Azeroth, that had been destroyed. And it had been replaced with very linear quests, very simple characters, and a leveling system that really was just designed to get you to level cap as quickly as possible. This was the time when Blizzard was sort of changing things up. They were removing group quests from the level up content. They were
removing group quests is fine, but they already increased the leveling speed from Classic to Burning Crusade, and then they increased the leveling speed even more for Wrath of the Lich King. Now that's understandable technically, because if a new person comes in and plays the game, they probably don't want to, they probably want to experience the new content. And if they're a returning player, if they create a new class, I guess that's also true. But at the same time, that took a lot of the charm of the world away from the players. Because the less time you spend in the zone, the less familiar with it you are, the less experience you have in it, the less everything, honestly. And if we don't care about something, well, we don't like that something. And now you spend like half as much time as previously in a zone, or even less than that, honestly. And, well, it was horrible. You never got attached to the zone. You never felt the nuances of the zone. Everything was fast, streamlined, and you forgot about it. Think about it. How many people have, fond memories of leveling in Tirisfal Glades or every starting zone of every race because you have done it so many times. You know what to expect. There's memories there. But currently the game the way it is, there's no memories attached to any of that. So I guess that's a big minus.
moving the necessity of needing to use maybe professions to help you. Well, not a necessity, it's not like you need professions in classic WoW, but having, you know, alchemy and having those extra potions to help you when you're questing in the Barrens, or you're doing that Agaman Mills family crypt quest line in Tearsfall Glades, you know, whatever. You can probably conjure up some examples in your head. You know, it was relevant, it was useful, it was handy to have those things. In Cataclysm, not so much. Everything was just kind of nerfed into the ground. Like I said, I'm going to come back to this point several times, but Cataclysm really broke the world. It broke what was special about it. Let's move on to the second thing, though. The second thing is that the endgame zones in Cataclysm, from Vashir to Mount Hyjal to the Twilight Highlands, they were all disconnected. And this is something that Blizzard learned from. Like, this was an experiment. They had never done this before. You know, in past expansions, TBC, Wrath of the Lich King, whenever a new expansion came out, there was a new continent that we got to explore and all the zones were connected and so on and so forth. Blizzard decided to do something different with Cataclysm, where they were going to have all the endgame zones separated and be in different corners of the world. And this was an interesting experiment, but Blizzard has never done
That doesn't sound that bad, I guess.
anything like this since, because a lot of people did not like this.
Why?
They didn't like how, oh man, you know, if I want to go from Twilight Highlands to Mount Hyjal, I gotta go through these portals, I gotta do this, I gotta waste my Hearthstone and go back to Stormwind, Orgrimmar, whatever. It was annoying, it was frustrating. There was a lot of travel time between the different...
Yeah, I guess I see it. Yeah, I guess I see how that would be slightly annoying. I don't know, but would it be that bad?
zones. Everything just felt disconnected. It was just not a, it was an okay idea. Now, there's nothing objectively wrong with adding more zones into the game. I think it would be...
Is saying disconnected actually a good way to put it? Because I don't think it's disconnected. Every zone is disconnected from the other zone usually when you know, play this game. So, well, they're just kind of almost next-ish to each other, so it's not a big deal, but some of them aren't. This was not a problem in Classic. You know, you want to level there, then you have to traverse half the world to get to the different zone. That was not a problem in Classic. So I don't know about this one. It doesn't seem that bad to me. Like, would people complain? Probably, yeah, but is it that much of a big deal?
Cool for Classic Plus down the road, for example, for Blizzard to add new zones into Classic Plus, or finish zones that were just completely, well, not completed, like a Jara or Silithus, for example.
Cool.
But don't make these the end game zones. These should have been questing zones, and the end game stuff should have been condensed into an area, a continent, an island, and so on and so forth. This is a lesson that Blizzard learned from experience and from Cataclysm, and it was a reason why a lot of people did not like the layout, or the zone layout of the end game at endgame,
Okay.
if that makes sense. The third thing, and I'll keep this very brief, but in regards to Cataclysm, the lore was kind of confusing. Let me ask a question right now. Very simple question. What was Deathwing's plan in Cataclysm?
No idea.
Like, not what was his plan, you know, to bring about the Hour of Twilight. Like, everybody knows that. But
Well, okay. What was Arthas's plan to just dominate the world? Not that great. What was even the story of Burning Legion? I have no idea. It just ends with you defeating Illidan and then a Sunwell. I have no idea what was the end game of that. I have no idea what was the end game of Cataclysm also, but I don't think that's a problem.
But what was he doing to bring about the Hour of Twilight? What was he doing personally? The only thing that Deathwing...
Contracting Bill Gates to create a giant mirror in front of the sun so we can reflect the sunlight, and then the experts are going to be like, oh wow, unforeseen circumstances, we did not know that this is going to happen, and then the world implodes. That's probably what's going to happen.
Does, lore-wise, if you really think about it, is he pops out of Deepholm and he sunders the world. Then he flies around and lights zones on fire, and then he summons Ragnaros in the whole Mount Hyjal area for the Firelands raid, if I remember correctly. And aside from that, that's pretty much it. He's just kind of flying around, just lighting zones on fire, just waiting for his raid to come out, where, you know, he flies up to Wormrest Accord, and then you got Thrall, and he blasts him with a giant golden dinner plate, and then we jump on his back and we kick his ass. Maybe I'm just forgetting, you know, because it's been obviously a very long time, but looking back at Cataclysm, it just kind of seemed like the villains were there. And it was just, we were kind of just hopping from raid to raid, but the villains didn't really seem to have like a plan or like a well laid out, we're gonna do this.
Well, yeah, they usually don't. Again, what was Illidan's plan? Stop the Burning Legion? Oh, okay. What was the Sunwell? Stop another guy who just wants to randomly destroy the world? Okay. I mean, World of Warcraft has never really been that deeper than just big baddie wants to destroy world. Okay, it is what it is. I don't think Cataclysm is unique. I don't think any expansion before did anything differently. The difference is we knew who Illidan is, we knew who Archimonde was, we know who Arthas is. Well, was. So, you know, that's the only kind of difference. Plus, that thing looks super fucking lame.
This, and this to bring about this conclusion. It was just more like, here are the villains, they're trying to bring about the Hour of Twilight, whatever that means, and however that's done, and we gotta stop them. But this was...
By the way, I didn't even know that they're trying to bring up the Hour of Twilight. That's hilarious.
Something in Wrath of the Lich King as well. Like, the lore was a bit confusing in Wrath too.
Oh, was this also Wrath of the Lich King? I really hated this. Okay? I really hated when I heard about this. Oh, because Deathwing flapped his wings. Turns out there was this continent that none of us knew that existed. Well, not continent, but there was this invisible part of the continent that no one thought exists because, you know, mirrors and shit. Okay. Oh, it sounds stupid, but okay.
It's a video for another time. I remember talking to my friends about this even back in the day. Like, what is Deathwing doing? Like, lore-wise, you know, this is when I was really into World of Warcraft lore personally, reading the books and reading the Shattering and stuff. Or I think maybe it's called the Sundering. I don't remember. It was the Warcraft book that came out at the time. And I was just a bit confused, but maybe that's just a personal point from me and my friends at the time. The fourth reason why a lot of people did not like Cataclysm is because of how early game focused it was. Now, for someone like me, like, I'm an altaholic. I love leveling in World of Warcraft. It's my favorite part of the game. I know I'm in a minority when I say that. I know that most people are really more focused on the end game and stuff. But
can we kill Thrall's kid finally, by the way? Asking for a friend. Can we finally just eat us, delete us, defeat us? Because, you know, that would be very American.
Cataclysm was mostly focused on the early game, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but here we go. The problem was that the early game experience that we got to have in Cataclysm was of a lower quality experience than what we had before. Now, some people would argue the contrary. They would say, oh no, the storytelling was better and the quests were, like, you know, better laid out and stuff. And you're right, but that's what made it boring. Once you've gone through Silver Pine Forest once or twice or three times, you know the story. You've seen Garrosh call Sylvanas a bitch. You have, you know, gone into Gilneas with the Forsaken and fought with them. You've seen, who was it, Godfrey, when he shoots Sylvanas in the back of the head? You've seen this linear story play out.
Oh, I get, I kind of understand what he means like this. But for me, it's slightly different, okay? If every zone has this absolutely epic quest line of things happening and whatnot, is it really special? Can it really be special if every zone has an epic storyline to follow? No, not really. And again, when the storylines are this epic and streamlined, they're boring. You don't remember them because, okay, there's this really epic moment where you're supposed to kill the invaders and whatnot, and you're done in 5 minutes. Less than 5 minutes. It's not even a challenge. You're done in 5 minutes. So, there's this epic invasion that you were talking about. I'm done in 5 minutes. It's completely boring. It's boring. It's so unbelievably boring. It's like the new leveling experience in Stranglethorn Valley that I went through. when I was playing, what's it called? The Jailer expansion, that one. And it was, you make a bunch of cities or something like that. I can't even remember, even though this was 2 years ago when I did it. You make a bunch of cities, and you abandon them pretty much instantaneously. It's boring. You don't spend enough time to care about any of this crap. And if you don't spend enough time with any character, you're not going to like those characters. If you don't spend enough time in the zone, you're not going to like the zones. And if you don't spend enough time in places, then you're not going to care about the epic conclusion of the zone because Sylvanas got called a bitch. And you're just not going to care about any of that. And that's the big problem if you do it. Well, how World of Warcraft now does it.
Over and over and over. Whereas in classic WoW, you know, what came before, and this is, I mean, I can make a whole video on this subject alone, but you really had the idea of the story was not linear. It just kind of took you wherever you wanted to go. You made your own path. You made your own adventure. You weren't being led from quest to quest to quest. And so the thing is that Cataclysm put all this focus on the early game, and yet the early game felt like a downgrade from what we had before. And this is not some personal opinion that I have. I mean, it is a personal opinion, to be fair, but this was a genuine criticism that a lot of people had of Cataclysm back in the day. There was even the fact that the level up experience felt less satisfying because the world had been nerfed. It had been made a lot easier. I mentioned earlier in the video that Blizzard had removed almost all of the group content from the game. There was still some here and there. You can find some in Cataclysm, like the Durnhold quest line where you do the Durnhold quest, but to be fair, you can solo all of that as a hunter. I remember doing that back in the day. Like, there's still group content, but it's very few. It's very far between. The world is not challenging anymore. You're just kind of running through it. Even when it comes to talent points in Cataclysm, they removed most of the talent point, like, I don't know the word for it, like potentiality in the game. In World of Warcraft Wrath of the Lich King, you've got what, 70 talent points that you can play with? I don't even remember off the top of my head. But the point is, in Cataclysm, you have, whereas you would think that you would get 75 talent points, the level cap going from 80 to 85, no, Blizzard actually nerfed the whole talent system, and in Cataclysm, you're only going to have 41 talent points. You're only going to be getting a talent point every other level. So the leveling was faster. It was more.
That's actually true. No one likes less talent points. That's like the big thing.
More linear. It was more boring. It was less rewarding. It was less engaging. And so, like, even though there was all this emphasis put on like the early game to make it as great as possible for a new player coming into the game, it actually had the opposite effect. Like, the opposite effect occurred with Cataclysm, and people found the new early game, well, kind of boring. Very boring, in fact. Maybe the first time you go
too fast, too little things that you care about, and no talent points. Yeah, I guess, yeah, I see it.
Through it, it's fun, but after that first time, I'm telling you, it's dull. But, you know, some people feel that way about classic WoW too, so to each their own. The fifth point was the introduction of a lot of group finder content. This was something that really hurt the social element of the game during Cataclysm's lifespan, and it was something of great controversy that still kind of exists to this day. You can find threads where people still talk about this on the forums and on YouTube videos and stuff. The introduction, or rather the making the game revolve very heavily around looking for group and later on looking for raid. And so people have a sour taste in their mouth when it comes to Cataclysm because of those two things. It was sort of like Cataclysm began sort of the death of the MMO, like the whole massively multiplayer element, and it started to introduce this idea of being a single player World of Warcraft player, where you didn't need to get into a guild, where you didn't need to interact with people, you didn't need to go out and make friends in order to conquer the world, and people really did not like that. The sixth point, going back to the whole LFR thing, we have patch 10.2, the Dragon Soul raid. Now, for those that don't know, the Dragon Soul raid, that patch 4.2, was the longest lasting patch in World of Warcraft history. Patch 4.2 lasted, get this, I didn't even remember it was this long. It lasted from November of 2011 until Mists of Pandaria was released in September of 2012. I remember doing the whole Hour of Twilight raid. I remember doing it on LFR, doing it on normal.
Dude, that's really long. That's almost a year.
This was the time when, for me personally, I really got deeper and deeper into role-playing because there was nothing to do in World of Warcraft for months. The game was completely stagnant. It was completely dead. Nothing was happening. The raid had been raided.
I didn't even know that.
PvPers were bored. Nothing was going on, and people were pissed off about this. Cataclysm, you probably are starting to understand as this video is progressing that like there was.
You know what? I no longer want to play Cataclysm. Well, Season of Mastery is gonna take all the time. When is Cataclysm even launching? Because yeah, Season of well, this is not Mastery, but Discovery is gonna absolutely just slap it. Because everyone obviously wants to play Discovery. Obviously.
There was a lot of reasons why people had a sour taste in their mouth in regards to Cataclysm because of so many lackluster things going on with this expansion. It's kind of like the LFG, or rather the LFD, the LFR crap. It just has Cataclysm, you just associate the word with this very sour time in World of Warcraft history, a time of controversy, a time of boredom, but really everything has just been leading to this. The seventh point is very simple, and it's just simply the fact that Cataclysm is not really considered WoW classic. It's not considered classic World of Warcraft, the OG golden era.
Yeah, again, World of Warcraft ended when the Lich King was killed. That's it. There was nothing left to the story. Technically, you could have. Technically, people would probably consider the fourth expansion to be OG if it was actually destroying the Burning Legion. But that didn't happen. That didn't happen. We got this. So yeah, this is definitely not OG World of Warcraft. That's for sure.
Of the game. Cataclysm is when the game went on full decline, which is when people in droves began to leave World of Warcraft. And the reason why, the big fundamental reason as to why.
Yeah, and after that, pandas? Pandas? Okay, so the edgy teenager, everything's on fire approach didn't work. So now we're gonna target housewives? House moms? You know? Women with My Little Pony collections? I mean, men with My Little Pony collections with Mists of Pandaria? Yeah, Mists of Pandaria was just awful. Dude, if Cataclysm at least sounded like there's a shot, then Pandaria was like, okay, now it's I don't want to be here.
Why people do not consider Cataclysm to be classic World of Warcraft, golden era WoW and such. It's really subjective, but I think it boils down to this, based on comments that I've seen here on Nixium or on forums and stuff, or even in game. I think it really just boils down to this simple fact. Cataclysm is a completely different game to the game that came before it. In the events of Wrath of the Lich King, if I remember correctly, Blizzard was purchased by Activision, and during, Cataclysm's development, Blizzard got a completely different design philosophy for Cataclysm compared to what they had for Vanilla WoW, TBC, and Wrath of the Lich King. And you'll see what I'm talking about. Like I was talking about it at the beginning of the video, but when you start playing through the world, you're going to see how Blizzard has nerfed the social element of World of Warcraft in Cataclysm. You're going to see how there's less group content. There's less of a need for trading with your fellow players. There's less of a community element. You're going to see.
Well, yeah, but no one likes trading with other players. No one wants to spend time trying to find a group for a quest that no one's doing. Those things are objectively 100% bad. Now, the overall fact that they completely destroyed the social aspect of World of Warcraft, that's bad. Because every single player that has been in an active guild where you can actually do things as a guild will tell you that the social aspect in World of Warcraft is really good. Again, I played Classic for, well, a long time, and the reason for that is, like, I didn't get bored was just the group, not the group, but the social aspect of being in a guild. Most of us literally just raid logged. It was great. Everyone loved it. It was fun. It was enjoyable. Bam! There you go. That really matters a lot. Like, the solo queue thing is nice, but it ruins the game. Because you should be looking for a guild to join. Okay? That's just the reality of it. Because when you find it, it's a way better experience than anything else in the game.
See how the world feels more linear. It's more boring and dull. You're gonna see how everything just seems to be designed to just get you on a linear path that takes you to endgame as fast as possible. That way you can start consuming the new raids and whatever the endgame content is. You gotta play it to really understand it. For those of you guys like me who played back in the day, you probably know what I'm talking about. But when Cataclysm came out, it felt like a completely different game from the game that we had played, previously in Wrath of the Lich King TBC, and especially vanilla. Cataclysm was a full departure from like the vanilla design philosophy. If you go and watch like the behind the scenes videos of classic World of Warcraft, meaning vanilla WoW, back when Blizzard was developing it back in like 2003, 2002, and they're talking about that.
I guess that's it for the video. It's the last minute. Anyway, that was Nixium. Good video, very interesting. Good points. Well, I actually don't want to play Cataclysm anymore. Well, I already knew that if I play it, I'm gonna play it probably for a very, very short time period. Because I mainly just want to experience how it was. Because I never experienced it. But man, watching this, I agree with everything he says pretty much. Well, most of it. I didn't agree with like one thing here, but other than that, yeah, on point. I guess Cataclysm is gonna fail pretty hard, huh? Well, anyway, this was Kuzer Sid saying, thanks for watching, subscribe if you haven't already, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.